Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. And we have Dr. Morgan Nolte here, and we are talking all about how to reverse diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and so much more. What if by fasting, you could start lowering your blood sugar today and you could prevent or reverse type 2 diabetes? So that's what we're talking about. We're going to learn how to optimize your nutrition. We're going to learn all kinds of tricks with fasting, how to get rid of stress, how to help your sleep. We're going to talk about movement and mindset. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. So we're so glad that you're with us today. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about, I know that you are really a specialist in helping people prevent and reverse type 2 diabetes. So, how does fasting really help people lower their blood sugar and being able to lose weight and even possibly prevent or reverse type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, well, the core of what fasting does to have those results is it lowers your blood insulin and your blood glucose levels. So anytime you eat, especially if it's any form of carbohydrate or protein, you're going to be raising your blood sugar, which is going to cause an insulin response to move that sugar into the cells for storage. And so I like to say fasting is the most effective tool that we have to reverse insulin resistance, which is the cause of prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, because when you're not eating, you're not stimulating glucose and insulin. And so I have my hand up here, so I don't know if people can watch, but it's like this is your baseline, right? So you eat, your blood sugar goes up, comes back down to baseline. You eat, it comes up, and over time, it just keeps creeping up and up. But if you fast, you're able to really force that baseline down and kind of reset the baseline lower for your blood sugar and your insulin. So it really is a really great strategy if somebody's interested in preventing or reversing type 2 diabetes. However, I know that when I say intermittent fasting, people have a lot of limiting thoughts that come up around fasting that we can kind of dig into, and we can talk about how do you know where to start for you and how can you overcome your fears around fasting.
So let's talk about that. So, what are some of the limiting beliefs that people have, and what would you do to combat that if someone had maybe a family member that was like, no, it's not good for you, and all of that?
Yeah, I think starting gentle is the best way. So if you're currently, for example, having 6 mini meals a day or 3 meals and 2 snacks, and you have a blood sugar problem or you have a high insulin problem, which test your insulin because that's going to predict type 2 diabetes 10 to 20 years before your glucose. So I have to always throw that out there, get a fasting insulin test. So what is so important to recognize is that when we are fasting and that blood sugar is not going up, that is going to be great for your metabolic health. It gives your digestive system a break. But when you're constantly eating these mini meals all day, you're constantly raising your blood sugar and insulin. You don't have a chance to lower that baseline. So I like to say start gentle. Start with 3 solid meals a day and remove the snacks, especially if you're not a very active person and you don't need to worry about timing your nutrition around workouts. This is so doable. So I recommend 3 solid meals a day within a 12-hour eating window. So let's say you're fasting now from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And that's a great starting place because it's going to force you to get rid of the late night snacking habit. Some people get up in the middle of the night to eat, and some people just kind of continually graze all day long. So I think it's important to recognize intermittent fasting, that means a lot of different things. And I say start at 12 to 14 hours a day of fasting with 3 square meals. And then from there, once your body gets used to that and your behaviors get used to that, then we can kind of progress to longer fasts according to your personal goals. But I personally typically recommend starting with the mindset work, starting with getting your nutrition dialed in so that what you are eating is really fueling your body to support the fasting period. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, a lot of people who are listening on this channel are pretty experienced. A lot of them are eating in possibly a 6 hour eating window. And so, what would you say to someone if they said, look, I'm already eating in a 6 hour eating window every day. I just have another 10 pounds to lose, but I'm kind of in a rut right now.
Mhm.
How would you respond to that?
I always say the solution has to match the cause. And I know how easy it is to think I'm just going to throw more fasting at this. But from personal experience, I've done, 5-day modified fasts is kind of the longest fast that I've experimented with. That weight will come right back on if your baseline habits don't change. So if you're struggling with a weight loss plateau, more fasting may be the answer, but it may not be the answer. I'd really like to see, what are you eating during your 6-hour eating window? Because even if you're overeating healthy food, you're not going to lose weight. If the cause of your weight gain or your stubborn weight loss is chronic stress that's raising your blood sugar and your insulin levels, and when your insulin levels are high, your body will not burn that extra fat. Well, you don't need to cut carbs, you need to cut stress. And so really getting into the root cause, or perhaps they're not sleeping very well. When you're not sleeping well, that's going to be a stress on your body, and it's going to affect your satiety hormones, and you might be more likely to overeat and crave carbohydrates. So that's why I say whenever somebody's at a weight loss plateau, the first thing I want them to do is track their food intake and liquid intake for 1 week so that I can have a very good understanding of what are you eating. And then the next thing is, how are we sleeping and what's your stress level? So if they have their nutrition dialed in, if they have their sleep dialed in, and if they have their stress dialed in, then I think that we can look at some longer intermittent fasts. I think from a weight loss standpoint, I have had the most success with like a 36 to 48 hour modified fast personally. And that's usually what I recommend to my clients as well. I like bone broth during a fast. I still put some half and half in my coffee. I'm not like a clean faster, and I still get results with that. So having a little bit to kind of tide you over, definitely using electrolytes is important if you're fasting that long. That's kind of the approach that I would take. And we can talk about exercise too. From my experience, I need to lighten up the exercise when I'm doing that extended fast. I can't tolerate the heavy weightlifting like I normally do. So some lighter intensity activity is what I usually stick with during that longer fasting period.
Did you know that you can get all 4 of the books that I wrote, Waste Away, Fasting to Freedom, One Meal into Tasting, and Freedom from Food? You can buy all 4 books and get the ebook for free. Go right now to chantelrayway.com, or you can go to Amazon. Also, I just wrote a brand new book called How to Delegate Everything But Sex. If you are stressed out and are tired of doing everything on your own, go check out Delegate Everything But Sex. And there's all kinds of freebies on the site. So let's talk about coffee for just a second, because I will tell you, this is such a controversial topic, and I love what you just said about the clean fasting.
Yeah.
So and I'll give you 2 sides of the spectrum. So I have a friend of mine. It's funny because she used to drink coffee, but she used to put a bunch of cream and a bunch of sugar, and she'd have like 2 cups of coffee every single day. And she just cut coffee like blank. Like she just said, I'm not drinking coffee anymore. So she just cut it completely. She decided not to do it. She ended up losing about 5 to 7 pounds just from that. Everything else she did exactly the same, but she was putting cream and sugar in her coffee every single morning. She cut that. She lost 7 pounds. Then I know people who have cream in their coffee and they don't put any sugar, but they put a little bit of cream, and they're like, it doesn't affect my weight loss at all. Like, I'm very thin. I have cream in my coffee. I don't eat lunch until, 1 or 2 o'clock. And I do have 2 cups of coffee in the morning. I don't worry about that little bit of cream I put in my coffee, or I'll have almond milk or whatever. And that doesn't bother them at all. So I want you to talk about this, because I get frustrated when some people get too Nazi about it. And so some people are like, if you're not on a clean fast, then you are, the devil, kind of thing. Like they just go so extreme. And while if you can do it and you can do a completely clean fast and you can do black coffee, then great. But I think a lot of people, they can have a little bit of coffee, a little bit of cream with no sugar, and it's not having a huge negative impact on that. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that you have to look at the caloric load that you're putting in your coffee. So if you're trying to lose weight, low insulin calories still count. So even if they're from MCT oil. I know bulletproof coffee is very popular, heavy cream. Those calories from those fats won't spike insulin. They won't spike blood sugar. Fantastic, but they are still calories. And so if you're at a weight loss plateau, I know one person I was coaching once had like 400 calories a day just from heavy cream in her coffee. And I said, let's just reduce that a little bit. That will definitely help. I'm not a purist. I think that I am so anti all or nothing because it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong. And it makes you feel like what you're doing is not sustainable and you're never good enough. So I really like finding that happy middle ground. But I think watching the portions on the half and half on the cream, personally, I don't recommend the store-bought coffee creamers. I used to use that Coffee Mate
They're
peppermint milk.
toxic. They're literally like the
Yes.
international ones or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, they are literally toxic.
There's really crummy ingredients in there. And from it, we were talking offline about gut health a little bit. A lot of them have food emulsifiers, which is not good for your gut health. It will really contribute to leaky gut. But I was getting about 20 grams of added sugar a day just from my Coffee Mate coffee creamer, because I would use 2 tablespoons and in each cup, and I would have 2 cups. And there's 20 grams of added sugar right there, which is ridiculous. So I think it might not be the coffee so much as what you're putting in the coffee, but I do want to touch on regular versus decaf. I think everyone has a different tolerance for caffeine. And for me personally, I had to stop drinking caffeinated coffee because I was getting up at 4 o'clock, 3 to 4 in the morning every morning, and I was just kind of wired. And I say my story because people may be experiencing the same thing. They may be getting the same symptoms. And I want them to know it could be from excess caffeine from your coffee. And then the other symptom that I was having was mid-cycle spotting. So kind of like brown in the middle of my cycle when I shouldn't be having any, bleeding or anything like that. And when I was looking that up, it was a sign of altered progesterone levels, which was kind of related to cortisol. And so this excess caffeine was a stress on my hormones to the point where I was seeing changes in my cycle and I was seeing changes in my sleep. So I'd really encourage people, if they are struggling with sleep and they haven't already experimented with reducing the caffeine, getting rid of it, please do, because caffeine has a really long half-life. Some people, 10 hours after you have a cup of coffee, it's still in your system. Like half of that caffeine could be in your system affecting sleep. But for me, it was hard. I went from 4 cups a day to 2 cups a day, from 2 cups a day to 1 cup a day, from 1 cup of regular to decaf. And even after that 1 cup swap, I had fatigue for 6 weeks, and I'm like young and healthy. And so, but it's worth it. I just want to encourage people, if you're drinking caffeine and you feel like it's affecting your hormones, go ahead and try experimenting your life without caffeine. Even if it's hard, it's worth it.
That's so good. So let's just talk about other ways that people can kind of lower their blood sugar in kind of easy hacks. Like,
Oh yeah.
kind of like, instead of doing this, try this, or instead of doing this. Because a lot of times, since we're on coffee, let's talk about this. Because I think one thing that frustrates me is kind of the all new craze now is oat milk. And
Oh, I
to me,
know.
that is like a way worse option. Like if I had the choice of having oat milk or having like heavy cream, I'd pick heavy, like an organic heavy cream all day long. Or, they have like like coconut milk, heavy coconut milk or coconut cream. I'd pick that all day long over, and if you don't have a dairy allergy, depending on which, but I think oat milk is terrible and it completely spikes your blood sugar. Do
It
you
does.
agree?
Yeah, yeah. I've definitely heard of anecdotal evidence of people wearing CGMs, having the oat milk, seeing that blood sugar spike. But just look at the nutrition panel, look at the ingredients, and just think with your mind, how many steps did this food product have to go through to get into this package? Because the more ingredients there are in a food, the more steps each individual ingredient had to go through before it was all combined together. And so I think it really does come down, like the pinnacle in my mind is a well-balanced whole foods diet, minimal processing, even the health foods, guys, because there's those There are chemicals in the health foods. There are artificial sweeteners sometimes, food emulsifiers like the lecithins. So you're going to see on about every single low carb protein bar, soy lecithin, which is a byproduct of soybean oil, and it's not good for your gut. On a lot of like the keto products, you're going to see food emulsifiers, like I think it's carrageenan, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and not good for your gut. So we not only have to consider what's good for our blood sugar and our blood insulin, but also what's good for our inflammation. Because if something's not good for your gut, it's going to cause systemic body inflammation. And I guarantee the sooner you start to eat whole, real, unprocessed food, the sooner you're going to feel better. And your food cravings are going to get significantly better. I know for me, the fewer processed foods I have, the easier it is for me to maintain my weight, because those foods are designed to make you want to eat more and more and more. And we all know even the healthy calories count. So that would be my opinion there. Now, you asked about blood sugar hacks. A simple one is if you're used to exercising for like 30 minutes a day, maybe a 30-minute walk, try breaking that up into 3 10-minute walks. So there was a study that was done that showed 3 10-minute walks had a greater reduction in blood sugar and hemoglobin A1C compared to 1 30-minute walk. That's because, especially if you're walking after a meal, your muscles are going to be using up that blood sugar right away. So that's one little hack. You can see I'm standing here. I have a standing desk. I've modified my life and working environment to use my muscles more. Another hack is eat the carbohydrates last. So if you have a plate and you have maybe, I usually like to say if your meat is cut up, it should be about the size of your hand. That's going to be the portion of meat that I recommend having. So it's about 5 ounces of cooked meat. If you want to measure it cooked, you're supposed to do it raw, but I think it's easier to do cooked. And then maybe you have some like non-starchy vegetables, maybe a 1/4 cup of rice if you're going to have like brown rice or some sort of grain. Have that rice last. So do the veggies, do the protein, then do the rice. That's going to have a lower blood sugar response. Apple cider vinegar, I'm sure you've talked about on the show before at some point, but that can help reduce the blood sugar spike. I try to have that like before a Thanksgiving meal. The other thing I try to do is refrigerate my starches ahead of time. So if I'm going to have like potato salad at a summer barbecue, I'll make it ahead of time, stick it in the fridge. That helps the starch reconfigure to be slower digesting. Those are a few. I'm wondering if you have any other up your sleeve that you
Yeah,
can
I would
share.
say, my son loves Italian food. So he's
Yeah.
just like, he's constantly like, we try to make it where like, because mom gets to pick whatever restaurant we like to go to 80% of the time. But sometimes we're like, Kyle, it's your turn. Like, where would you like to go to dinner? And inevitably he will pick like a very nice Italian restaurant. And so when I go, I don't ever eat pasta. I have a gluten allergy anyway, but I don't even get the gluten-free pasta. But what I'll do is I'll either get zucchini noodles if they have that. Some of the restaurants here do that, or they'll have like broccoli or some kind of vegetable that I can just put the pasta sauce
Yeah.
over top of. And like the other day, we went to um, kind of a more fine dining Mexican restaurant, and I got shrimp tacos, but I got it like wrapped in lettuce instead
Yeah.
of like the regular tortillas
Else.
that they have. So just like those simple little hacks. So it's like I'm still eating tacos and I'm still having, the quote pasta, even though I'm not really having the pasta, but I'm still feeling like I am. So I love that as well.
I love the broccoli trick. We have a spaghetti works in Omaha. I'm outside of Omaha on a farm, and it's delicious to get whatever meat you want, whatever sauce. I mean, there's probably sugar in the sauce, but hey, like we're
Right.
using the starch from the pasta. And over the broccoli is delicious. Like
Yeah,
spaghetti squash is an excellent option if you're cooking from home or if someone has it out. So those are great hacks too. I like those. Often we'll go to Renza, which is like a fast food restaurant, and I'll just order like a double hamburger without the bun. You get 2
exactly.
huge beef patties. It's delicious and you don't have the blood sugar spike.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, just talk a little bit about protein because I think that protein really can help with the blood sugar and making sure your blood sugar stays low. And I think a lot of people kind of are, especially sometimes they're like, I just have a hard time finding protein I like or whatever it is. So talk about how important protein can be with keeping that blood sugar low.
Well, absolutely. So protein is the most important macronutrient. I usually recommend 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight a day. If you're fasting and you're only having 2 meals a day, that's going to be tough. And I actually don't recommend that you're trying to like get all of your protein in, but get the minimum dose per meal, get like 30 to 50 grams per meal. Anything more than that, what I've seen is it does affect blood sugar because your body can only use so many amino acids at a time, and excess amino acids will just be converted into glucose to go and be stored as fat because your body doesn't have a great way to store amino acids. It uses them and then it needs to be replenished, right? So from a blood sugar standpoint, protein does a few things. The first is it increases your satiety. The semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy medications, all of them are designed to stimulate GLP-1, which is a hormone that makes you feel full. So if the goal is to feel full and eat less calories to help you lose weight, protein combined with fat, like healthy fat and fiber and water, that has a similar effect. But we have to prioritize protein in our diet at the optimal dose of 30 to 50 grams per meal. And
Mm.
then the other thing aside from satiety is it really helps slow the digestion and absorption of everything else that you're eating. So if you have, let's say, a cup of rice and then a cup of rice with a chicken breast, that 1 cup of rice is going to have a lower and slower blood sugar response when you pair it with the protein. So that's why I always say protein needs to be in every meal because it's going to help slow the blood sugar response.
I don't know about you guys, but I am stressed. And if you're feeling overwhelmed this holiday season, then I get it. With all the family get togethers, it is just a relentless source of stress. But anyway, there is something that I've got called Stress Guardian, and it's actually made by Bioptimizers, the people who make the magnesium breakthrough, which I love, love, love. But anyway, they are literally made this new product. It has 14 adaptogenic herbs and it just regulates your stress. I just actually took some right this second and it's awesome. If you go to stressguardian.com/wasteaway and put in waste away for 10% off your first order, it's stressguardian.com/wasteaway. Go there now.
Mm. So have you ever heard of something it's called the dawn phenomenon? And basically it's, different researchers believe that the overnight release of certain hormones that happens, they can naturally increase your insulin resistance. And so a lot of times, if you look at your blood glucose, they say when you wake up in the morning, you don't want your blood sugar to be over 100, between 100 and 120 might be pre-diabetic. And so a lot of people were emailing in and they were saying, I think that my blood sugar is okay. And these are people who've been doing fasting, but for whatever reason in the morning, their blood sugar was like maybe 105, 110, but that was it. It was only high like right in the morning. And then every other time, like the whole rest of the day, they would wearing like a continuous blood glucose monitor and it was staying like at 80. And even when they were eating, it wasn't going up so much. So talk a little bit about that and kind of the use of a continuous blood glucose monitor and what things people can do. And if you're concerned, if they woke up and it was like continuously 105, 110 in the morning, but the rest of everything was okay, what would be your opinion on that?
Well, I think my first thought is just to explain it a little bit. It's
Mm-hmm.
because cortisol spikes in the morning. Your hormones are on a circadian rhythm too. And so cortisol spikes early in the morning to wake you up. Like it's kind of the wake up hormone. When cortisol spikes, blood sugar spikes. That's why that morning spike is happening. It is a normal phenomenon. This dawn, this awakening response for the blood sugar to go up a little bit is normal. Now, what I would be concerned about is what is their fasting insulin and what is their hemoglobin A1C. So you can look at the blood glucose monitor and it's going to give you okay data. I want people to understand that there's a margin of error with these blood sugar monitors too. So I think that they're so, so valuable for that instant feedback on how does what you eat affect your blood sugar, right? It brings the the future consequences of an unhealthy diet into the present moment. And that's why I love them. I think they're so beneficial for the pre to post meal spike. So according to Levels Health, that shouldn't be more than 30. So if you're starting out at 90 before a meal, you really don't want it to go above 120. Otherwise, they consider that a spike. And then they have such tight blood sugar regulation parameters, they don't recommend it go above 110 like ever, which was pretty surprising to me. That's a lot more conservative than what the American Diabetes Association post-meal blood sugar readings are. So we have to look at it. We have to understand the value of a CGM, I think, is really to help you understand how what you eat, how stress, how sleep impacts your blood sugar, but take it with a little bit of a grain of salt on like, it said it's 95, it said it's 100, because you can do a finger prick and see very quickly that, oh, there's some discrepancy here. So margin of error, that's why I like going off that hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month estimate of your blood sugar levels, but even more so your fasting insulin. So if you have a great fasting insulin, if it's less than 6 and your hemoglobin A1C is in a good range, I don't care at all that that morning blood sugar is 105, not a problem. So we have to kind of zoom out, figure out what's the purpose of a CGM, what value do they bring to the table, what other tests can we maybe order and look at to ensure someone's metabolically healthy.
So let's talk about if someone needs a hemoglobin A1C test. And so like what I've heard is, if you've got intense thirst or you're just going pee a lot, or you are just feeling fatigue or tired all the time, or maybe your vision's a little bit blurry, what else would you say to someone where you would say, okay, we definitely need to get a hemoglobin A1C to check. What is that 3 months been doing, and seeing, are you at risk for type 2 diabetes?
Actually, I wouldn't even check the A1. I'm like, okay, if you have a heartbeat, you need an A1C. Like, I think every adult should know their A1C and their fasting insulin. So, but weight loss resistance, like you said a lot of nice symptoms there, but high blood pressure and weight loss resistance are 2 other major signs that you need to pay attention to blood sugar, but more importantly, insulin. So fasting insulin is not the same thing as fasting glucose. It's not the same thing as hemoglobin A1C. Your insulin levels will rise in the background for 10 to 20 years before you start to see a rise in that fasting blood sugar or your hemoglobin A1C. So if you really, really want a heads up on a type 2 diabetes diagnosis, you need to check your fasting insulin. Your doctor may have no idea what you're talking about. Many physicians do, like most physicians, do not check fasting insulin. It's not on a standard blood panel. We have them on our website. People can order an at-home test. They can also go to Ulta lab tests. Just Google ULTA lab tests and then insulin, and like a $30 test will pop up. So if their doctor's not very supportive of ordering that, they can get it for themselves, and they should get that for themselves, because a lot of people are walking around with a normal glucose and a normal hemoglobin A1C, but they're still having the symptoms that you talked about. And like neuropathy is another one that I hear of, like numbness or tingling in the feet is another early sign that your blood sugars are off. Get a fasting insulin test, because again, there's a lot of people that have false hope that they're actually healthier. Like they're not as healthy as they think they are. And that will allow them to justify that they're good enough for now. It facilitates procrastination of lifestyle changes. So that's why I really like insulin, because it gives you an earlier indicator of your risk.
Guys, I just want to interrupt for just a second, and I want you to hear Paul Saladino talk about why liver is so important. And if you don't like liver, we have another option for you.
Your ancestors were eating liver. And the reason that this sort of wisdom has been passed down is because liver is very nutritious. It's basically nature's multivitamin. If you look at the nutrients in meat, they're great. You've got zinc, you got B6, you got B12, you got some K2. But if you look at liver, it really complements what's in muscle meat. And there are many unique nutrients found in organs, specifically liver as a powerhouse of these, that are difficult to obtain outside of liver. Like meat and organs are like peanut butter and jelly. They just go together. They're supposed to be eaten together. The easiest way to eat liver is just to do it raw. If you don't want to eat liver raw, you can cook it. But the reason that I like to do it raw is because there are unique nutrients in liver that are probably somewhat degraded when you cook the liver.
this really is like the most nutrient rich supplements that you can find. And they are amazing. I have tried them. I absolutely love them. So just go to heartandsoil.co, use the coupon code and save you some money there. So functional medicine doctors, one of the big differences between functional and regular physicians, functional medicine doctors, I feel like their numbers in what is a healthy range are a lot skinnier
Yeah.
than what a regular doctor would be. And so my dad's actually a regular physician. He's an internal medicine doctor. So I happen to know I can geek out sometime on numbers, and I'm a math major anyway. So, but anyway, so I happen to know like when with your A1C, like anything less than 5.7% means you don't have diabetes. 5.7 to 6.4 is like pre-diabetes. And then anything over 6.5, that would indicate type 2 diabetes or possibly type 1 diabetes. So with that being said, the less than 5.7 means you don't have diabetes. Would you say, since you're more on the functional side of things, would you say that's even too high? Like,
I
would you
would.
say I would like it to be like 5.5 or
Yep.
less, or what would that number be for you?
5.5. So I really like Levels Health. I feel like they've done a great job with data aggregate, like just getting a lot of data from a lot of different people. They have a really good team of medical experts as their medical team to kind of bring the best of the best minds together to kind of figure out what are the optimal levels. So I like 5.5 or less for an A1C. So if they're at 5.6, 5.7, I'm like, that's a little bit too high for my comfort.
I love that. And have you seen people with fasting, if they maybe decrease their eating window and they're doing more fasting, that you're seeing those numbers go down?
Absolutely. Yeah. We just got an email from one of our members today. She's been doing, I think, 14 to 16 hours of fasting and tracking her food regularly on the Carb Manager app. So she's watching what she's eating. She's fasting. She's seeing excellent results. A1C is almost in the optimal range. She's losing weight. So yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been amazing. Tell listeners where they can find you and where they can follow you.
Yeah. So they can go to our website. It's zivli.com. That's ZIVLI.com. And they can find all the information about our online course and coaching program. Enrollment opens a couple times a year. Next open in September. I also have a really nice YouTube channel. They can look up Dr. Morgan Nolte, Zivli. And I would suggest they start with the Insulin Resistance for Beginners playlist. That's a really nice comprehensive overview, kind of short, quick tip videos on insulin resistance. And then on Instagram, I met Dr. Morgan Nolte, and my podcast is Reshape Your Health. So on there, I have guest experts come on and talk about a lot of functional medicine topics, gut health, insulin resistance, a ton of mindset stuff. We didn't even get into that today, but mindset I'm so passionate about. So we talk a lot about like behavior change, habit change, and mindset on the show too.
Awesome. Well, maybe we'll have you come back on the show and talk about
that'd be
mindset
great.
next time. Well, this has been great. And you guys stay tuned. We've got another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.